Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be taking a look inside the Miata. Alright guys, so the other day I decided to drive the Miata to work after a track day at Buttonwillow. Hadn't driven it in a little while, so decided to drive it to work. Drove to work, seemed like it was doing okay. Came out, warmed it up, pulled it back, saw a little bit of oil, thought, just a little bit of leakage, no big deal. Checked the oil, still plenty of oil in the car. Drove it to work anyways. But then I got to work, went from leaving work to go to another place, and I noticed something irregular. Oil pressure had shot up to about 115 psi. Very unusual for this car. Usually it's between 55, 65, something in that range. And I'll even put some, so saw that, thought it was weird, wondered if it was just like an anomaly or a sensor issue. So drove to another place, stopped, did some things, and then went to drive home. When I started up again it did the same thing. So I thought to myself, I should really look into this. But of course, I just drove home. Turns out it was something I should have stopped, parked the car, got a trailer, and resolved. Didn't do that. So started driving, and all of a sudden started hearing this clicking noise. I started wondering what it was, and apparently what it was terrible, because it sounds like I have some rod knock. So yeah, so now we're gonna drain the oil. We're gonna check out what we got, take off the oil filter, see what's going on in there, and probably prepare to do an engine swap. All right, let's get to it.
All right, so now we're gonna see how good or bad this is. Let me tell you, that's not looking very good. I mean, overall, I'm not seeing huge chunks of metal flying out of the oil, which always is positive. What we're seeing on the end of our magnetic drain plug, not very positive. This is where the oil leak was coming from, which that's a super sweet eBay adapter to make the filter housing go up to the top. I'm wondering if one of those O-rings blew out, because it looks like that's where we're getting our oil leak from. So in anticipation, draining water, draining oil, drain trans fluid, because I'm betting we're pulling this motor out of here. This is what we got going on with the drain plug. Let's wipe this smudge off here, which a lot of metal, metallic-y greatness, which, you know, having metal in your oil is always a really big positive. So that really helps with lubrication and ensuring that the oil and the bearings are really nice and good. Couple of bigger flakes in there. So honestly, I've definitely seen worse, but not what you want to see, especially with the sounds we were hearing. All right, so in the oil, I don't know if you can really see it, but it looks like a bunch of copper flakes, which usually copper comes from rod bearings and, well, main bearings in general. So, seeing quite a lot of flaking. All right, so this is what's happening. Engine is being pulled out. Already got the radiator out, intake, all those things. Wiring moved over, heater hose is taken off, all the usual things. Just gotta move some of this wiring stuff out of the way, and then you have to get under the car, which is always the fun part. I will say my modifications with the radium fuel rail and these little red caps make it really nice. I can cap off fuel so it's not stinking like fuel in here the entire time. You can see with my Aeromotive Fuel pressure regulator, again, here that is. Yeah. So everything's pretty nicely kept. Yeah, just gotta keep on trucking, get all this stuff disconnected, go underneath the car, disconnect the drive shaft, and a couple other doohickeys down there. I'll pull out the exhaust manifold just because it'll make it a little bit easier. And then I'll be able to pull it all out. All right, so here's where we're at. Exhaust manifold is out of the way. Everything's disconnected from the top of the engine and basically almost ready to pull out. All I got to do is go down, disconnect the drive shaft and the long ladder thingy that I can't remember what it's called all of a sudden. And once I do that, then I can hoist this out and put this in, because I basically got this as a just in case motor, and just in case always happens for me. So joy! But this is just a stock BP4W that a buddy of mine got from Europe, sold to another friend. Then I traded him a turbo for this. Yay! So coming in handy at this juncture in time. Obviously I still have to like do a bunch of stuff for it. I plan to put my coolant reroute on, put a different pulley on. I'm probably going to rewire so that I can have a cam angle sensor instead of just a cranking cam. Got to put my trigger wheel on, alternator on, debating if I want to put power steering in, and all sorts of other fun stuff. Yay! Alright, so this is the motor that's going to go in the car. As you can kind of tell, it's just your standard everyday like junkyard motor. So let's hope that, you know, nothing crazy going on in it or wrong with it, and we'll get her all set up and pop it on in. Alright, so what you see me doing here is I'm going through and changing every gasket that I possibly can on this motor. I'm also changing the water pump. I'm setting it up to do my coolant reroute. I'm also deleting the CAS. And I originally was trying to use the front cam angle sensor, decided not to, based on some other things that I would have to do to make it work and not be the greatest. So ended up just taking care of all that stuff, getting everything situated so that this motor could be very successful. Obviously doing the timing belt, just going through making sure the motor's timed correctly, all the little things that's great to do when you're going through and doing a motor like this out of the junkyard. Also just lubricating the cams, also putting in new spark plugs, just getting everything situated in a way that makes it so that the motor can be as successful as possible, and limit the amount of leaks that you could end up with. Alright, now we jump into pulling the old motor out. So this motor is going to go on an engine stand, and then I'm going to disassemble it at a later date and make some determinations on what actually failed, although I do believe it is some sort of rod or main bearing. Now we're jumping into pulling the intake manifold off and the transmission. Once we get the intake manifold and transmission off, then we're going to swap it over to the new motor, and obviously that means swapping over our ACT clutch, which has really served this car greatly over the years. I think it's been on 3-4 different motors. From when I upgraded from the stock motor, I went to another 1.6 that was a little bit peppier, and then
From that motor, I went to a 1.8 junkyard motor. From that 1.8 junkyard motor, I went to a built motor that me and a buddy Ryan built. And now it's going into a stock 1.8 liter motor. And it's going to serve me well again. So definitely gotten some good use out of that ACT clutch over the years. Alright, motor's back in, everything's hooked up. All I gotta do is fill it with fluids and do some other stuff to get it back running. And obviously want to make sure that I drive it around a little bit, check this engine out, make sure everything's looking good on the oil pressure side, and as well as temperatures and so on and so forth. And then we'll take it out for a track and see how she runs. Huge thanks to Mike for dropping on over real quick and helping me get this motor in. It's always a little bit easier with two people, and you know, teamwork makes the dream work. Alright, make sure to subscribe and check out some other awesome videos that I have on the way. Always some Mustang content, Miata content, or just something in general of us hitting the track and having fun.